this goes back to what we started more or less separating in a very clear point with the children's program on Wednesday. Periodic table is correct in a matter state. We have the same kind of what do you call it, element in a plasma state. Is the behavior. So we don't say if the periodic table is right or wrong. No, it's there. It's helped us to develop technologies and lifestyle around it to understand it. But now, as I said, periodic table goes with physics. Science of physics, not science of plasma. So in a plasmatic condition, which is the work of the universe, and is not in a matter state, what we call in a Ganser state, as a plasma of an entity, then you have a different approach, different understanding in respect to the whole thing. So there is nothing wrong with the periodic table, but in a plasma we don't see an electron. So the first thing when you go into that state throws the whole periodic table into turmoil, because it works with a number of electrons and protons and neutrons, and we don't have that. So now we have to establish a new understanding in how we see a plasma, which is all about the same shape and size, in respect to what they are, what they perform, what they indicate, what condition they create for the environment they're in. So in a plasma technology, when you be open into the structure of the plasma, look at like the GaNs of copper oxide, look at the GaNs of the CO2, you don't see number of protons, you don't see number of neutrons, you don't see electrons. So where does the knowledge go? But we see the behavior of CO2. We see behavior of copper oxide. So the new technology, the new science in plasma technology, which that's why I said is totally different than physics, because physics to me is a matter state, and there is nothing wrong with it, because that's a state we have to accept, and the matter in that state behaves that way. It shows itself to be what it is. So if you are used to one electron and one proton, if I can go bigger and bigger that you can see it, then what happens to this plasma, which is just a hydrogen, behaves like hydrogen and shows itself as hydrogen, but inside it we cannot see any separation. So there is a need for a new understanding of plasma. So how do we understand? How can we recognize? How can we distinguish one element plasma from another plasma? In a very simple way, we have to devise new systems. New systems where they can measure the magnetical, what the plasma rejects, and gravitational, what the plasma brings in as magnetic field. And the difference between the two is the strength of that plasma in its environment. Because the same plasma on Earth condition can be this size. But when we go to another position, the same plasma can be this size. So then we see the plasma is conditioned to what environment allows it to grow into and intake. Maybe in another universe, maybe in another part of the galaxy, when there is much stronger gravitational magnetic field, the size of the plasma of the hydrogen will be this big. Because this is what the environment in that area allows it to take size of. This is what we always say. In a larger scale, the size of this solar cell, which is one plasma, is dictated by the gravitational magnetic field of the total galaxy, or of the fields of its own, what we call area, dictated to be and allows it to be. If you go back to human body, the gravitational magnetic field and the size of the cavity of the The chest allows and dictates the size of the heart and the size of the lung. But that's a physical restriction. The same thing happens in the universe. But instead of bones, gravitational magnetic fields decided. If you've been online for past few days and even today, you see it very clearly. Gravitational magnetic field of the system allows for us, if it shrinks, to hear the radio, and then when it expands, due to its strength, we cannot hear the radio. That's a physical observation. So how do we recognize elements in the universe according to their plasmatic gravitational magnetic field? There are two ways to do from a human point of view. One is observation by color. That's what you've seen on book number 3. We put a color range on it. And secondly is observation by the detection in the difference strength at a point of the interaction of the environment, which is here. On the edge of the plasma, once we measure the gravitational magnetic field, we understand this point, at this point, if it's a CO2, if it's a carbon, if it's copper, if it's oxygen. Because it has a fingerprint. You have a strength level. On the other hand, the same size in the same environment, if interacts with the same area, that's why, for example, if this is the environment and this is the size CO2, at this point we see the copper oxide as CuO as blue, and at the same point with the CO2 we see it as white. It's the same plasma. This goes back to understanding of the structure of the elements in the universe, where whatever gravitational magnetic field sits and it spirals up, at this point is CO2. At this point is copper oxide. As you go in, the strength increases. As you come out, the strength reduces. So by the color, we should be able to see what we have in what composition. This is the difference in understanding the operation of the plasma. I was telling the knowledge seekers in the past week that you do not, or in a way, you assess what is the gravitational magnetic field of destination you want to go to, and you build it in the reactor. Once we pass the gravitational magnetic field of the solar system, the life and the colors are totally different than what we are used to in this shell. I was explaining this one to a child some time ago. If you are in an egg and you're a chick, you only see the white color of the shell. But when you break the egg, when you break the shell, you see all the colors of the leaves and everything else. It doesn't mean that the colors did not exist, but it's the environment which you were in dictates you to see what was available in the shell with you. And we see these and we think that's the color of the universe, and we see different shades and colors, and they say this planet has this material in it, that planet has that material in it. They see these things on a matter level of what it is in the atomic structure. But by colors, in fact, it's easier to do it with the plasma. So in time, as we separate the plasma technology from what we call physics, as a new science, as a fundamental basis of the creation, then we understand there is nothing wrong and there is nothing missing from any of the tables from the work of the scientists of the past. The only thing is, we always looked up. We looked at one atom, and then we called it 1 + 1 molecule, and then molecules and the multiples of molecules, and we built a structure. Now we're going in the opposite direction. We're going low. We're going to below the what we had before. And this is what it looks a bit strange. But in fact, you cannot build a building without a foundation. And the world of physics has been built on a very rocky foundation because nobody knew what's underneath of it. So we ignored it because we didn't understand it. And now, at this present level, the man can only understand now the work of the real plasma as we open the books. But this is not the foundation. There is a level below this, which is beyond understanding of the man. In time, will open up. But for the time being, plasma is what the world of the man, or the physics, is built on upon. So we go into what we call the, in a very simple way, as we said in the talks with the children, we go from plasma to physics, and more plasmas together, we go to chemistry, and then we go to biology. But below plasma, there is a level which is the base of the creation of the whole universe, and is beyond the understanding of the man. Because man already has enough problem with physics, and even what we talk about the plasma is unacceptable to them. It's very much like when a man said the earth is round, they put him on a what do you call it, on a noose. The structure of plasma does not come to be the original, the fundamental, the origin of the creation. There is a subplasma level, which is the fundamental and the point of the creation. But if we go into that process, it's a book number 8, which is written about the magnetic fields, which in that book I have explained the origin of the creation. So, what you talk in Mendeleev table, you talk about this part. You talk about physics. You're sitting in the margin, in the place, in the area, which is this part. What we talk about is before physics, which is a plasma. So there is nothing wrong in all the things we've seen, but in the world of physics, you talk about electrons and protons. In the world of plasma, we speak about magnetic gravitational field strength. If you add one plasma into the totality of a plasma of another one, you don't increase the strength or change the strength on the boundary. You feed the mass of the new plasma in a grams, which is added, into the center mass. So what does this center mass does? It has more strength, and so where before you have the electron, or let's say another element plasma added to, you could see at this point blue. Now you add another matter, which has increased the center, at the same point you see green. But you see the same plasma. So if you go back into what we said and what we've done from the beginning, which is the spiral of, actually anti-clockwise is the most appropriate, of the element, opening up the plasma magnetic field. At this point, you see blue. But if you go with a black, and you added the plasma to it, the fold is this, is less, so you see green. And this is what we see changes. What we see in what we have. And that's where the change comes, and that's where the new technology understanding of the plasma is gravitational magnetic field, because you reach the same point with a higher or lower strength gravitational magnetic field. If you're higher, you create a different color. If you're lower, you create a different color. It's very much, as I explained before, is how hard you rub your hand. If you rub your hand slow, you have less heat. If you're very cold, you rub your hand faster and get more heat. It's the same hand, it's just a motion, but in plasma it's the magnetic gravitational field strength. So This brings back into, if you understand this point, how matters change in the body of the man when you breathe it. So it changes the whole fundamental of the physics. It changes the whole fundamental of understanding of the creation in biology and chemistry. And then what we say, it looks strange and its change is different. In a way, we speak from the plasmatic magnetic field. You speak from the physical point of view as a matter state. So how we absorb, how we attract, how we see things is different. For example, we even see in the guns of the copper oxide, we see in the lab how fast, due to its gravitational magnetic field mass, it sinks to the bottom of the container compared to the CO2, which is lighter. It's very simple. When you have higher strength gravitational magnetic field, which is a matter under condition of the Earth, you have a stronger gravitational field than the magnetic field. This is opposite to what you understand, but you see the effect exactly as you see in the matter life, that the heavy elements sink faster. But in fact, the combination is by the ratio of the mass of the center plasma, because its inertial gravitational magnetic field interacts with the Earth, so it looks as to be the same behavior as matter. So in so many ways the confusion comes in observation, which is not reality in the process of the whole thing. Because the size of the copper oxide more or less is the same size as CO2. It's just where the gravitational magnetic field strength in respect to the environment changes. If you take the copper oxide in the gravitational magnetic field beyond the solar system, you will observe different colors in different positions. Because the field allows the expansion where to be. If you keep it on the same point, you will see different colors, because in reality, in the new environment which you have a different field, you see the interaction in different diameters, in different radiuses. So now it goes back to what Dr. Elia tried to connect the situation with what we explained in the matter situation, with how the energy passes the wall of the lung. When you speak the language of a child, you have to explain that you understand. So when you speak the language of the man, you've got to speak the language of the man. In the first part, as we said, the whole structure of change of the teaching changed from what do you call it, matter to plasma. It started with the situation with Marco coming saying, yeah, he's standing and listening now with his ears open. He came when we said you have to give a talk, and he's thinking, and he said, you know, but in book 1 you talk about the matter and antimatter, and then in original papers, in the things, because the man could understand, we explained to you that the hydrogen and nitrogen comes and changes to the oxygen and helium. But if you could understand what has been said in the past 6 weeks, there is one point which all of you have missed, but you heard it. Every cell in the body, in the blood system, is taxi-destinated. Taxi-destinated, what does it mean? It means it has a fuel only to go to that destination and no more, and it can carry certain passengers. So the energy crossing the wall of the lung, how much of it is absorbed, is not decided by the lung, it's decided by the cell. The red cell decides how much energy I need to go from the lung to the toe and deliver specific energy to that toe in that cell, or I need so much energy just to go to the brain, which is just about a few centimeters away. So that's where taxi destination comes. Therefore, it goes back to what we said about the operation of the lung last week. How energy from the matter in breathing air going through the liquid of the lung, as what you do in your containers, converts the matter into its gans state. And in gans state, it delivers energy to the wall. And at that point, when the blood cell comes to the wall, decides how much it picks for what it's destined for. Therefore, the energy is not on an electron base and conversion of the electromagnetic or magnetic field length, is on gravitational magnetic field length. So, the cell, let's say it's a nitrogen, comes into the lung, it crosses the water, it has to come in interaction with the water it will never come in touch with the wall. In the process of crossing the liquid, it changes now to a gans of the same size. And this is the wall. And when it reaches the wall of the lung, all the elements have the same size. They all deliver the same energy. And they charge up the wall. And as the blood cells pass, they charge up what they need. How many passengers and what distance they are going to come back. Because in the structure, when the red blood cells they're made in the bone marrow, the brain has already decided what cells need to be for where. And what it needs to carry and what energy will carry for what. So now, when the energy is given, what is back in the liquid, when it comes back, then it decides in what matter is going to appear as. And that's why you can breathe in and out so rapidly. And the conversion is very easy. Because it's on gravitational magnetic field, it's not on the matter. It's very much like you send a wave or you send a message to the moon, and it takes so many seconds to get there. And if you do through gravitational magnetic field, or what we call a zero time. In this process, we work on a zero time, instantaneous. Because some of the nitrogen, which just crosses the water in a plasmatic condition, will never even reach the wall of the lung. Because through the same link, it transfers its energy to the next cell on electromagnetic field length. So this is how life exists. Life does not exist on electrons and electric currents in the body. The life exists, a red cell is a plasma. It's a combination of in a gans state. So now you charge it up. You want it to be shown green, yellow, or whatever. But in that sphere, because it's taxi destination, they're all yellow taxis and they're all in New York. But they go to specific destinations, from airport to such a place, train station. They can't go to a hotel. So now you understand how the whole understanding of the physics, biology, and chemistry changes. And it becomes so simple. Because now you understand whatever is taken in and is not used, or whatever is needed on top of the charge, leads to contraction and expansion of the lung. The contraction and expansion of the heart. And that pushes the whole structure, pumping of the lymph, pumping of the bone marrow through the same pressures up. Heart can suck some of the bone marrow from the red cell, but it needs a push, which the diaphragm pushes the lymph through the holes of the lymph itself for it to push the bone marrow and the red blood cells up through back into the vein to be supplied. It's become a simple system. This is what I said to Dr. Elia this week. I said, we have to spend more time going over what we thought in past 5 or 6 weeks, not going from one organ to another. Because once you understand the cycle of life in the human body or in any body, in respect to emotion, the feeling and reproduction, all starts and stops within what we started from. The bone, the muscle which attached to it, and then with the master as a brain, and then how master decides to run its work with the heart and the lung. When you put a diaphragm here, this is your human being. This cavity here is for digestion, what has become the leech for the emotional part to exist. The bottom part, which to it is not relevant because soul can live on its own, does not need physicality. That's why the reproduction organ has been left as far as possible, because that's a physical part. It's got nothing to do with my emotional part. And then the tools of getting this physicality around to be able to feed yourself, which is the arm and leg. Then you understand the whole structure of the creation. The whole why man looks like this, or a fish looks like this, or different animals in the universe look different. Once you become physical, you are trapped in the cycle of being able to find a compromise and accommodation for the physical part to exist within the operation of the emotional part. And this is where a lot of confusion comes in the world of medicine. And even this confusion doesn't exist with the man, it's beyond this planet as well. Because once you understand this, you understand what feeds the emotion, the soul, and what feeds the physicality, and they have nothing to do with each other. It's like you live in a community, one is a baker and one is a butcher. Butcher can't eat meat whole day without the bread, and bread man cannot eat all his own bread. So he bakes the bread for the butcher, and butcher gives some to him as a meat. And this is exactly what happens in life. And this is how the physical part has become a leech on top of the emotional part of the brain. And this we see in places where there is a need for the emotional part, which is the neurosystem connection to it, has made its own stations when we come to it, what we call the glands. And wherever there is it's vital that the emotional part has a say in that it can endanger its life, the emotional part has made two pieces that if one fails, the other one can support. One of them is two kidneys. And we don't see this in anywhere else in the physicality, because when we come to kidneys, I explain to you why we have two kidneys. This is not the decision of the emotion, the physical part, this is a decision of the emotional part. Otherwise, one kidney could have done the same job. You don't have two stomachs, you don't have two intestines, because that's to do with physicality. But when it comes to the kidneys, brain, emotional part has decided on two parts. The same as the lung, and the same as the divisions in the heart. Because there is a need for it, and we explain this when we come to it. And in every position, which is vital for the emotional part, the boss has put an office in. We call it glands. Kidneys have a gland. Liver has one next to it. The digestion system has its own. Everything which is creating problem or can create what is important to the vital operational existence of the emotional part, the boss has put a master in. somebody to watch, and I control. You do your physical part. So when it comes to it, we explain in more detail. But how element changes from one to another and come back to be element, this goes back again to the transformation of GANs, and then why in a body, when a GANs comes to a certain given point on the constant condition of the gravitational magnetic field, which is created in its own environment, it becomes copper, it becomes zinc, or it becomes something else, and then it operates as a GANs. And then you understand how a very small gland in your parathyroid glands, for understanding this, decides how I convert the calcium to potassium or potassium to zinc as I need it. All it does, it allows the central mass of the plasma to increase or reduce, that in a physical observation it shows itself as that matter. That's how simple it is. That's how, for example, phosphor in certain illnesses becomes calcium, because of the mass within the center of the, what we call the principal matter, changes slightly by the order of certain information. And this goes back to what I explained to you yesterday. In a very simple way, we don't control the reactors by electronic, but we control it by impulse, by gravitational magnetic pulse. So in one instance you can be 100 meters away from the Earth, in another instance you are 10,000 kilometers away. You don't increase the speed of rotation. You change the strength through the impulse of the gravitational magnetic field. That's what parathyroid glands do. They change the gravitational magnetic field strength within the plasma to show itself as phosphor or calcium or zinc. And that's how it comes to operation. That's why it's important to have the glands right on top of your chest. And then you understand how the cancer, other illnesses can be controlled. How you have white teeth and you have red tissue muscles, and then you have a white tissue muscles and everything else. Because the gravitational magnetic field, which is released by thymus, by order of the parathyroid glands, decides which part of strength of the cell will manifest itself at the point of need. As simple as this. It doesn't decide how many electrons and how many protons and what's going to be a chemical combination. All it does, by the information about gravitational magnetic field of B12, which is cobalt. Cobalt does just add a radiation. Cobalt in its radiation at that strength has both gravitational and magnetic field strength. But man has only learned to measure its magnetical field. So now you understand how simply elements in body are changed from one thing to another by control and the decision of what is needed by the boss through his subordinates, and executed by thymus. Because how much radiation is added to the core, it decides what the core is going to be. That's why the plasma all over your body is transparent and is the same, and you call it a plasma. When the plasma reaches the point which carries the information which received according to its environment from the center connection, it changes to what is going to manifest itself as. If it's in the sac of the liver, in a certain specific, every thickness of the liver decides how much field going across it. And what environment is given, what the structure is going to be. So you don't need to send that with calcium there or proton there, or sorry, potassium there. It's what has been carried by plasma as totality as one, at the point of the delivery, and then you see the same structure repeating in the same place. Be it you cut a liver across, you see. You cut a kidney across, you see different shape. And then you understand there is no food ever, matter ever carried across the intestine of the man. Everything is carried as energy, as a plasma gravitational magnetic field, but because it's in the salt liquid of the stomach, then it becomes what you call a plasma. It's like a CO2. It doesn't exist, but once you create a condition, it shows itself in the liquid. And then when it gets to, let's say, kidney, or let's say it gets to the bone, it becomes calcium. Because of the gravitational magnetic field, which has been released by the brain in conjunction with the decision of how much is needed, what needs to be changed from matter to another matter if there is a shortage, by parathyroid gland, and by the gravitational magnetic field which is released by thymus to show to what level of solidity the matter will show itself. So now you can see the whole structure of the creation. All I need to do is to take the emotional part of your brain, and I'll take you anywhere in the universe, and you'll have 20 legs in one universe, in one what do you call it, environment, in one part of the universe, and in the other part of the universe you have 14 eyes and no legs. This is how the space refugees of the universe have existed. And this is how man has to understand. This is what slowly we open the books, that you cannot be shocked that you made the GANs, now you see this performance. You made the GANs of copper oxide, you see this performance. You put a very few pieces of them in a course, and you are very excited. You receive 12 kilograms, 13.8 kilogram, and you go down to 10 kilogram or 5 kilogram in the future. You see it, or you can cover the radio and it doesn't really make any noise, and the rest. In fact, in the structure of that star formation, you have the heart, the brain, the operation, and how you can see the field decides what's going to be heard and what's not going to be heard, or what's going to be where. And this is why I keep on telling you, pray for the reactors you build, because your reactors build what you call a free plasma, which that free plasma has a life, and it dictates what happens around it. So you become part of the creation. This is what yesterday after we finished, Marco said, okay, there were 42, but what is the other two? Where is the other two which Moses never wrote? I said, read the last two paragraphs of the motion paper, you find that answer for the two. This is what Moses never wrote, and now I wrote it in 2 paragraphs, you can understand it. And that was very easy. How the creator, by touching, reaches every created around in the universe. It's the same as the magnetic field, which is released by the thymus, by the order of the brain, in what becomes calcium in your body, or becomes a potassium, without the thymus ever being present. And this goes back to what I've been telling you, that in a physical body, 20% of the information has gone through the neural system, 80% goes through gravitational magnetic field, the same as the love of God for his creators. You turn up to be man on this planet, on this position, with 2 legs and 2 arms, and the same thing in another dimension, you have 14 arms, because you need it, otherwise you can't reach from one side to another. So now you understand the process of the creation. You have to understand this process carries a responsibility, and you have to understand the responsibility sits with the creator, not what is created. Because the created can do whatever he likes. But the condition is made. You can jump up and down, the condition shall not change. Because it's decided by what it is. That's why it goes back again. You don't see somebody with 14 hearts and 20 legs. Because within the structure of what you call it DNA, which is again a gas state, gravitational magnetic fields are positioned and they create certain fields. And those fields in interaction decide the structure of the physicality. And this is what man never understood. It's the DNA which is a slave to RNA, not RNA which is a slave to DNA, but as a habit of the man, we only take the physicality. You see the DNA, the structure of DNA, and say there is a RNA, but the RNA is something else. RNA, the position of the RNA, the strength of the RNA decides the structure of the DNA, what it's going to be. And through RNA, you get a connection with the creator. Because it's non-dimensional and it works in the same field of strength. So, periodic tables are not wrong. Periodic tables are 100% correct. And each scientist defines it the way they understand it for the certain people who don't understand the other version. And that is in the matter and physics state. In the plasma state and the creation of the universe, matter is the same in different strength. It depends on the position of the observer, where you are on the circle of the gravitational magnetic field strength. Any questions?
Okay.
I have a question about the appendix. What's the purpose of the appendix?
We haven't gone to it, and it's useless. There's no need for it anymore.
Okay.
It had a need. At a certain time for the food you used to eat, the man needed it. And in so many ways, it's become, it's actually, it's like your, what I called, I was talking to some, was it, I think one of my sons. It's like your fourth intestine, but in a way it was a spy in the cap that it controls the thing like a tumor, like what one of the glands. But it had a certain purpose, like what do you call pancreas. But in time, with the change of habit and with change of actually the appendix, most of its work became to an end when we received the heart decided to have 4 chambers. When the 4 chambers created in time, a lot of number of glands which were around the body for different operations separately were amalgamated to one, and some where there is no need for. And appendix is a remnants, it's the last leftover, but it still has a function. That's why it's there. It's a function which is not physical, but it's in a way it's a substation in the background. You find people with appendix with different mentality and behavior, and then you understand the reason why. Look at the position of the appendix in respect to what is absorbed and what is rejected by bigger intestine. Then you will see it affects the behavior, because this is a residual absorption, which used to control what it needs to be absorbed from what was left over after all the work. We explain that in the coming time.
Mr. Keshe, you mentioned the word free plasma a couple of times in the last few workshops. Can you explain that term a little bit more, and especially in relationship to the body or to the emotional, to the feeling part, whichever it would pertain to the most?
Free plasma is the plasma which has not reached tangibility. You cannot physically put a shell on it and say this is it. A GANS has a shell. A free plasma has not reached, because it's in balance and changes according to the environment, gravitational magnetic field.
It would be in like fact, an egg without the eggshell?
Without the head shell, yeah. But very soon, you will see, actually you've seen it, we showed it yesterday on the bar, in the center bar. You see its fingerprint. You see the fingerprint of where I showed you yesterday. You see the border between the white and the black. You see its effects, but you cannot see because it's free. It holds according to what the environment allows it to hold. And then you can create the environment for it to grow or to reduce if you know how to do it. Today we were discussing with Marco and in the lab that we have to move all the power supplies and everything on board of the system, because our detector, which is sitting facing this free plasma, has become a noose around his neck for his existence, because the plasma comes in touch with the, or near the, what do you call it, the detector, and it releases the energy which is not needed and it needs for its existence to grow, and it's created a limitation to it because the charges leaves the environment of the plasma. So now we are putting all the power supplies and everything. You will see the changes coming up in the next few weeks, that we go all on board. Which means when the detector becomes part of the plasma, so plasma doesn't lose its field, and we see the shell to grow beyond the boundary, and we see the size of the free plasma by the interaction when it's strong enough with the field of its environment, which allows it to grow into, when it becomes a constant space, where you see the border, what we call a bright light. We start talking and making an arrangement for it today with Marco and then we see where we're going to go.
Do we normally see free plasma within the environment of the Earth?
Yes, we live in it as part of it.
Okay. It's not an unusual thing, but it's when it's created in a reactor environment,
it needs element for it to be created, a position to be. A lot of people see it as fireballs. A lot of people speak about fireballs. They see fireballs in the air. These are kind of the free plasmas which in interaction, in their motion with the gravitational magnetic field of the environment show themselves as light.
These are free plasmas. Also seen the upper atmosphere, I think, between some of the higher cloud structures or higher parts of the atmosphere, are they not?
It's just a package. It's just packages of gravitational magnetic fields which do not have physical dimensions. More or less, let's say it's a stone without actually, what do you call it, hard surface.
When we normally look at something though, like if I was to look at my desk, that would not be looking at free plasma, is that true?
You look at what?
If I look at my desk in front of me, or I look at a cup.
No, this is the tangibility. That's the matter.
Right. Now, could it be possible that someone could look at those items and see free plasma rather than the physical?
Depends on the gravitational magnetic field of their creation. That's why we see different colors and we see different positions.
Some people, for example, psychics and so on, might see light coming from those objects, internal glowing light, for example. Is that an indication of more of a plasma?
Is the interaction. Even a wood has an aura, because the wood has gravitational magnetic field, is active. Just because you feel it doesn't mean it's solid. Solid position is where collectively they have made this barrier which you cannot penetrate. So when you have that, you have to interact with the gravitational magnetic field of the environment. There is an aura. If somebody can see it, you have a different strength of doing it. That's why people say, oh, I can see the aura of this man or that object. It's just that their gravitational magnetic field within their body, or in the liquid of their eyes, I should say, allows them to see a slightly different spectrum. Maybe lower ones or maybe higher ones. Depends on what they see and how they see it. Every object, be it a stone, be it the water, be the human body, has an aura. An aura, it means the interaction of gravitational magnetic field of the atoms, which are the plasmatic themselves and dynamic, make in respect to the interaction with their environment, gravitational magnetic field. So Earth is dynamic environment, and the stone has dynamic, so they must create a light. And partially what we see is that we see the stone as different colors or a wood as different color is because of that interaction.
Mr. Keshe, some objects are called sacred or have a certain vibe to them, special vibe or sacredness. What would be the difference in those objects compared to anything ordinary? Is there a difference in the
Nothing, it
plasma?
depends on the eye of the beholder. It is very much depends on the eye of the beholder, and what this means is the gravitational magnetic fields which they carry. You know these crystals, the long white crystals, what do you call them? Park crystals. Malden crystals. Oh, yeah, they're like a salt, they're like big chunks, you can buy it. I can hold any stone, nothing happens to it. But when I hold these stones, they usually break up to pieces. That's hard as anything. You don't see any cracks on them. But sometimes when there is a balance in my structure, I can just hold them for a while. It's happened a few times. Caroline is laughing at me because we've seen it. Yeah? And it just falls to pieces. Disintegrates. Because I can create, in my condition, an environment that allows the interaction gravitational magnetic field at certain lines to separate. And you can hold it and do whatever you like with it, just nothing happens to it. But then you can hold a copper wire and you can bend it without me being able, and I have to literally do everything to bend it, but you do it by just holding it. This is what the magician does. The famous magician which holds a spoon or a knife and they bend. His body, he doesn't do any magic, but he's learned how to transfer the plasmatic gravitational magnetic field of his body to objects like metals, which they can find loosen the interconnection between each other. So it's like what I showed to you last time. Hot water in the sugar, and the sugar, how it dissolves. But with this, we all have this ability, all of us. But the only problem is we got to find out which matter we can affect. I've tried the spoon, I killed myself. There is no way it bends, and the guy holds and he bends. Because his aura, his gravitational magnetic field, matches to the metallic condition. With me is sometimes, not all the time, is with these stones. I'm sure somebody can do with a glass and some other people can do with ice. But we have to find which one we are, and we can create a field in that line. Any other question?
I have a question, sir. So, if you remember, if you remember when we spoke about ATP, you say that the hydrogen is a supplier, the carbon is connection.
Hello?
For our body. Can you hear me?
Can you repeat it? You got lost somewhere in the middle.
Yes, okay. When we spoke about ATP, if you remember, when become ADP. So we spoke about that the hydrogen is a supplier. The carbon is connection to amino acid. Oxygen is like a magnet for our body, and nitrogen is divider, and a phosphor is a fingerprint to our RNA. And regarding now breathing, is mean like we take a divider nitrogen from air like Magrath field, and then he divide to helium. In that case, what will be meaning of helium? I mean, like you call all of each element with some kind of function because of the plasma understanding of them. And what will be
Yeah, helium is a
helium
stability.
explanation? Yeah,
Helium is a stability.
instability.
It's not a stability. Is a stable.
Instability. Okay.
Yeah. So whenever you need stability, you use helium.
Okay. So
Because
divider
what
becomes
helium
instability.
does? No, wait.
Mhm. So yeah.
What helium does? What helium does?
Yes.
It can and it does release gravitational magnetic fields of a certain proportion all the time, which
Constantly.
is constant, and
Mhm.
under certain strength is equal to extreme ultraviolet. This is something happens, for example, we see it here in the lab. And I've mentioned this to the knowledge seekers a few times. Every time we have a beep, we see a peak with our detectors running. We have a detector which every time there is a peak, we hear on the graph we see a peak, we see a noise from the detector. And I explain this to the knowledge seekers. This can be the interaction of the fields on the Z line interacting with the fields on the environment, or the effect of the fields as they are going to go to feed the plasma inside in interaction with the environment or the Z. But you can specify that. Don't forget, we have alpha, beta, and gamma radiation detectors in the lab. So at certain length, we release fields in gravitational magnetic field, not as rays, and it doesn't harm us. It's not harmful to human body because it's a package, it's not a ray. And that, in the eye, when it reaches the detector, it shows itself as kind of one of the radiations. But as the detector sits, what, 20, 30 centimeters away from the core, it cannot be alpha or beta or gamma. It's the plasmatic which manifests itself at that position with this situation. Since we start running the cores, the stable cores with the small ones, you see a change in the behavior of the knowledge seekers they're not aware of. Because now the knowledge seekers have a source which is at peace with itself. So it brings peace. The behavior has changed in a very calm situation. I'm fully aware of it. I see it. A certain serenity has taken over in the lab because the reactor inside and the free plasma is not taking or giving, it's just bringing balance. But you're not aware of it unless you're an observer and you know what you're looking for. This is what it is and that's how it is, and in a way is the process of what we call the creator and the creation. The fields of the essence of the creator touches the man and it brings peace, brings tranquility. When I walk into the lab, I found a lot of peace. Because physically, I know I receive what I need. And today I took Arman round to other side. I said, now we have to move the reactor outside the building. because it's getting disturbed by things and other reactors inside the lab where it is, because they're close to too many. What you receive as a package is not important. What you let go as a package to receive the gift is important. Otherwise you get clogged up. It's like you're going shopping and shopping and shopping and don't putting any rubbish out after you're finished with it.
There is a question from the live stream now that you mentioned the clogging up. What is the best way to keep the lymph stable or balanced?
Lymphs should do that themselves. Even in the condition of the cancer, they do that themselves. Because they find balance with what they receive. Lymphs are part of the physical part of the creation. And that's literally controlled by the glands. Don't forget the lymphs are one of the places that you can find high level of radioactive material in. They are the kitchens. They are the only places you find knives to cut with. The thymus, through the gravitational magnetic field, releases the information as a plasmatic form. At the lymph, the information is converted to the physical part. Lymphs belong to the physicality. Any other question?
I just will ask Rick to give again the slide where I just written the chemical reaction. You remember, Rick? Just because I want to say something and to Mr. Keshe to see, if you remember the slide. I will tell you it is like is not we think regarding Markgraf theory. So
Mark is asking, while you're
yeah.
looking for that, Mark is
No,
asking.
I'm telling you why. Yeah, I will explain myself. So I just want to make like some kind
I
of
can't see
sentence
what
how
you're
you.
talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't see what
when
you're talking about. Wait, right, Elliot,
okay, I'm
please.
waiting. Yeah.
I am on live stream, but in the lab.
No, on the live
No.
stream it's appear the slide.
Yeah, just you gotta wait. We gotta find. Wait, we are looking for the live stream of the health section. Okay, yeah, carry on. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the same way how you speak about the ATP. So may we now read the reactions like the first one when we speak about the nitrogen is become a helium and then oxygen. Can we say that divider release, how you say, is stable
You see,
field of
no,
UVF and
no.
become
In
like a
that,
magnet?
no. You in the position in the lung, the fields are free in what they want to take.
Okay.
As they need it. So if you have a nitrogen which is available to its surplus energy, it absorbs it and then it shows itself as the GANs or the plasma of oxygen.
Okay. When take helium.
So then,
when take
it takes energy, it takes gravitational magnetic field equal to of helium.
Okay, it means divider take equal electromagnetic field stable of
That
related with
increases its
helium
mass, that becomes
and
oxygen.
become like a magnet. Become magnet for
Magnet,
us is
yeah.
oxygen.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are able to read like that. And when divider release package of energy become a carbon, and carbon is connection with our amino acid.
You see, look at it this way. If you have a current, you got a current flow of blood by the wall, the maximum that the plasma of nitrogen can give is equal to energy of a helium, gravitational magnetic field of helium.
Okay.
So now you're given gravitational magnetic field of helium, and now in the contraction and the motion of the body you are rejected. When you come into the matter level, you show yourself as a carbon.
Yeah, and actually show himself like a connection to amino acid.
In a way, but when
Yeah.
you reject it as an energy plasma. You don't
Energy
produce
package.
protein. Yeah, you don't produce
Yeah.
protein in the lung in such a way. There is certain amount of protein always produced in the lung. That amount of protein produced in the lung, it leads, if it's the wrong way, it leads to lung infections, because now you're dealing with microbes and viruses, but if they absorb too much energy. And this, and partially, part of the lung cancers we see is in the change of the condition, where the amino acid, what you see on the top layer of your, what do you call it, your batteries, which we have in the lab now, solidifies in conjunction with the plasma of a matter, and then there starts the seed of a cancer or a tumor as a solid matter. And that's why with a lot of systems you can change. There is people ask me a lot of questions about COPD and other kind of the lung diseases. It's very much COPD. It's to do with the mechanism of the contraction of the lung and production of the water or the liquid. And other kind of respiratory problem is to do with the interaction of the matter in the lung. That's why we see diseases with lung with certain work, because now the matter enters and it solidifies and makes connection with the lung. COPD is to do with the physical operation contraction of the lung. COPD can be helped very easily with the operation of the systems, breathing systems. But when you have respiratory problems which is connected to materials, then you have to find a solution how to release that matter energy within the liquid of the lung. Cancer, lung cancers are very easy to interact with this technology. But certain tumors are impossible to handle with this technology with the lung, because they are continuously in different position of motion and could change.
Yeah, I understand that.
You got to go back to understand and walk away from the matter interaction into plasma interaction, and what the plasma can give and plasma can take.
Yeah, we just wanted to try to make some kind of new language in a way how you speak, and to make a sentence. How we done with ATP, and when we spoke about the ATP, and then was carbon group of amino acid, we say that hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen make a combination like a supplier, connect to the amino acid, and then oxygen keep its shape of that group. You understand? Just try to make a language. Yeah.
Yeah, let me explain even.
A picture there on your pad that can describe it.
Let me explain to you something very easy.
Okay.
If this is the oxygen and it has the bigger mass, because of its plasmatic in the Ganser state, than the hydrogen and the nitrogen and the carbon. Now you understand why the oxygen becomes the center gravitational field. Because of its mass, because of its holding more of principal matter. It's easy to explain. In the universe, we do not speak about oxygen and hydrogen. You speak about mass of the principle and the strength of the mass of the principle at the point of interaction which it releases. So now once you understand where we are at this point, you will see in the whole structure, oxygen, if you look at it, the matter some point of view, has more of the what you call neutron and proton. So it's heavier. It's the same as like the sun. In one way, in interaction with the nitrogen, it still is heavier, so it still dictates the position. In respect to hydrogen, it still is what do you call it? It's much heavier, so it still dictates in that position. In respect to carbon, it's still the same. So that's why oxygen become what we call magnetic in this, because in this planet, the decision and the division of the life sits between the upper atmosphere and the surface of the planet. And in this zone, this is where the nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon and oxygen exist. And that's why we say oxygen is the magnetic field. Look at the water, H2O, oxygen with 2 carbon, much heavier magnetic mass. Look at the CO2, the same. Look at how oxygen, according to its atomic mass, is the heaviest, is the center, is the sun, becomes the sun. And that's why in the position of the atomic structure and the molecular structure, it dictates the whole thing, where it's going and who's going to be where. It's not going to lose anything, but it allows the gravitational magnetic field of the nitrogen to put pressure on hydrogen, which is the weakest, out of the center, to be squeezed out, to release energy. It's very simple. In a matter language, we talk about extreme ultraviolet, but in plasma language, we speak about the size of the principal matter and the condition which is under. One thing don't forget, which is essential, and I keep on going back on it. Once amino acid behaves as an entity, like in the body of the man, it operates on the vacuum. It doesn't operate on the matter. And it's a huge difference between the two. And that's why we say plasma technology is different than physics. If I touch you and you had no plasmatic GANs within your body, it will take the same time difference as it takes for a message to go from here to the moon to be heard. But because the line is in gravitational magnetic field, is instantaneous. Because in the matter section, every electron has to move. Physical movement takes time. And most probably halfway down the line, the vibration disappears, and then you won't even feel that, you know, you got a nail through your foot. This is what this is what breaks down. This is when you have a nerve injury, you don't feel things so good, because at that point you rely on matter state. This we explain when it comes into it, when we speak about the interaction of the things. But now you understand in a plasmatic magnetic field why oxygen is the center focal point and why carbon becomes a communicator. Because it's a balance in reaction. So the message is easily carried on through its plasmatic magnetic field. This you have to understand, the plasmatic magnetic field interactions in a plasma, not in the electron or electrical physics, which is totally different.
I think the next book supposed to be dictionary, sir, about the elements and the meaning.
No, it just should be a picture, a book, a page about the colors in the eye of the
Yep.
man, about how each material looks in the world of plasma.
Yeah, because we
Then,
are able now to say just the hydrogen supplier, carbon communicator, balance in reaction, the
yes, but
oxygen
don't
is a
forget,
magnet.
no. Wait. This comes to another problem. You're looking at the eye of a matter. First of all, oxygen has a gravitational magnetic field. So nitrogen does not sit immediately next to it. It sits somewhere here. Carbon sits, for example, somewhere there, and oxygen is there. There is a still gravitational magnetic field position applies and implies in the whole structure. You have to understand where it is positioned and how nitrogen in respect to hydrogen stays close to. Because if you look at it, hydrogen is somewhere here between, because with the nitrogen and a hydrogen you make a balance of 15 compared to 16. At the same time, the carbon has to create a balance between this and between this, and at the same time with the center. If you look at it in a very direct way, you have again a triangle base on the top, a pyramid. And then the distance from the pyramid is dictated. Look at the structure, it's a stable. It's a pyramid structure, and we call it, you got to realize something, which is this four together create a plasma. That the free plasma in this plasma position finds its interaction with the earth and other plasmas. You don't look at individuality. You look as an individual cell, what they create is like the free plasma we have in our system. And then that field, how it positions itself in respect to the other reactors, other elements you call them, in the structure of the body. If you look at it this way, if you have the oxygen and the four elements all together in the triangle, then you have an imaginary or a free plasma which is created, which has got nothing to do with the three. Then this interacts with another free proton, electron, whatever you want to call it, amino acid, where the interaction of these two makes it necessary for a third to exist in a given condition of the salt, let's say of the liver. And this can be a copper. And that's how copper comes to be existing in the liver. How you need copper for neurosystem for your muscles. And this is how the structure in the vacuum condition of the body of the man is decided. Look at the shape of a kidney, and then it should give you a lot of answers about its structure and its plasmatic and why its extraction system. You have at the end of the kidney a pipe which is disposed of. The point of connection of this pipe to the kidney is a dictator of what is going to be extracted from the kidney. It's a reactor. And then when you cut a kidney, look at these layers, the shape of it. It gives you all the information you need to know about the creation. If you look at it, it's a quarter of a, what do you call it, a reactor. And it carries a sac which sits in it. It's got what we call the skin of the kidney. So nothing else outside this can matter, because the salt in there decides, and the density and salinity of the salt decides what the structure takes place in and have inside. So you got to look at not the plasmas which are in the amino acids, is in the free plasma which the amino acid create in conjunction with the salt which they're in. And secondly, you don't need to make the salt, because you can create the gravitational magnetic field of the salt, and that's what the body of the man does. So the salt itself, it creates a certain field, which that field decides at this point in conjunction with this is going to be a copper here. Behavior of a copper. This is what you will understand very rapidly, that no one, under no circumstances, can patent anything to do with the plasma technology, because it's natural, it's the essence of creation, and natural essence of creation cannot be patented. So it goes with a lot of crook business which is going on to be patenting whatever it's got to do with the Keshe Foundation technology. What is natural cannot be patented. And so there can be no control. That's why we teach it freely, because it's a natural process. The only thing is, man never understood. If you can patent a plasma, then you can patent the universe. And patent only works within the boundary of the bunch of crooks on this planet only. You cannot sell your patent to the Martians. So with this technology, we finish with the patenting and forcing technologies. Because it's free, it's given free, and it'll be living free life of its own. Nobody can modify genes, because now you create the plasma of what you need when you need it. And you do it because your body does it. So if your body does it, it's a natural process cannot be patented. Then we are all owned by a patent writer somewhere, and it's called the creator. There it goes. The people who are trying to Keshe Foundation control, now you lost it, know-how. It's a natural process, cannot be patented. You just need to create the condition as it is. If you understand this, for example, you understand how you get skin cancer. The skin cancer is one of the easiest cancers to resolve, because you have exposed your body under certain gravitational magnetic fields which your protein cannot and become solidified. So undo it. The time has come to understand the working of the universe, not the working of the man, because it suits him to understand it. So try from now on, every time you speak about any atomic structure, chemical structure, biological structure, immediately start looking at the plasma of what is created it and how it's become. We are putting a lot of restrictions on the health side. People ask, can you do this, that? Because at the moment I can't do. It's only me till I teach others to do it. But there is nothing you cannot change, as now you have the power to create the condition. If you know how to create a condition, would you like it to be sweet? Would you like it to be sour? Would you like it to be hard? Would you like it to be a rock? Or would you like it to be liquid? Because when you can control the structure of the plasma, you can control the environment of the plasma at the point of manifestation. So now it's you who decides the temperature, pressure, and everything else, as I explained yesterday to Lucian, and he understood straight away about how current can go through the plasma, through the nanolayers, and become current in the matter state.
There was a question from Eric Clausen regarding, somewhat related to that, the body, can it create new lymph nodes for when they have been amputated due to cancer issues? Does that make sense?
You got to go, yes, yeah, can the body create a toe when it's amputated from the hip? Yes, it can, but you got to understand how to, you need the extension of it. When you lose limbs through amputation, then you have to understand the moment of the amputation, the job is already spread to the other limbs. Body has an automatic mechanism that or it shuts down or it transfers work to another position. If you remove the limb through amputation, but the part of the organ is still there, let's say it's a leg, the work of that lymph is already carried to the other side, to the other leg, which has most of the information of the same. This is what I say, if you lose limbs, especially with the cancer, it spreads the cancer, because the information has to come from somewhere else. Next question. Are we in our 2 hours or just about? Are there any other questions?
We're at about 5 or 8 minutes away from 2 hours.
Yeah. What I said to Dr. Elia before this week as well is that we have covered a lot of points, like the bone, the muscles, the brain, the heart, and the lung. It's good to spend a couple of sessions, next sessions, to understand the interaction, interconnection, and the operation of these organs in respect to each other. And if it's okay with you, Dr. Elia, if we, next sessions, we just go for going in depth in understanding the process of working, how the lung operates from what it receives, let's say, from the bone marrow. Or how does the heart operates from the information it receives from return of the limbs in the body. To understand, it's no use just going from one thing to another just to cover as much as possible. It's better to understand more in depth, that it becomes much clearer than just trying to cover the whole pitch.
Yeah, it's okay, sir. So what you want to be the next, like a bone and lungs?
Bone and lungs,
Connection?
or bone and yes, we have to.
Yeah,
We have
bone
to
and
do it.
lungs. Yeah, just to
Bone
be
and
on.
lungs, or bone and hearts, and then we see how they. It's the connection between bone and heart. It's one of the cornerstones of existence for the human body.
Okay, so what each
We
one
do,
to be
if we
first?
do like bone and heart is the best, because I think we can explain why. Because heart cannot operate without the bone producing a bone marrow, what do you call it, the red blood cells, which is one of its operations. Or heart cannot operate without the existence of the lymph and the existence and production of the bone marrow. Because one of the chambers of the heart is especially designed for bone marrow.
Okay, so then it will be the heart and relation with bones.
And with the bones, yeah, that'll be nice.
Okay.
Okay, so next week, if you have any questions, we'll try to answer.
Can
Okay.
remind people to send questions into the health at KF. I'll just put that on the screen here briefly. healthkf@gmail.com is the...
Oh, we have a question. The most important thing here, we have a question here. We forgot, we tried to answer Dr. Elia. Marco asked a question. Can you ask your question? What Marco asked is, can we say that the soul is a free plasma? In the essence of its creation, yes. Not to do with its physicality. The soul is the plasma of the created. So it has
okay,
no boundaries.
but we make a difference here on earth between the soul and spirit. So
It's like
how we are able to explain?
It's like it's a cable.
One is in jail, one is out.
Caroline says one is in jail and one is out. There is the connection between the physicality and the soul. We call it the spirit. It's a communication line. And as we do not have connection with our souls, we stick to the communication line.
Okay, in that sense, we are able to say that the spirit is treated like our thymus.
Very much so.
Yeah, because the thymus is communicator in our body. Seems to, between
Yeah,
the reactors.
seems to, with the reactors. But the thing is, you have to understand there is a connection, there is an interaction or a connection between the physicality and the fields. I always explain it for ease of understanding that the soul is like a proton and electron is the soul. And these two have a field of communication, you call it the spirit. Physicality and the soul. These are how you, it's like reading what's coming through the cable, but you're not the actual receiver of it. It's a very, very fine definition. I received a very strange question since yesterday, which I think in what we talked about yesterday, of the soul of the prophets and what do you call it? The light they see. The soul as a dynamic entity has no dimension. But its size and its dimension again is dictated by its own strength and the other souls which are in their environment. It's very much in the tangible direction. So when you're allowed and you're gathered more strength as you become, you can reach and interact with the higher orders. This I explained some times ago about two people in the past history, recent past history. One is the last Pope, and one was Princess Diana. The Pope John Paul, who died, not the one who resigned. These souls are very much like what you showed with the nitrogen receiving helium becoming oxygen. When you pray, when you give your feelings from your soul, your being through your soul, you add to the mass of the soul, which is the receiver. It does not mean that it receives it, accepts it. But if it's accepted and the number of souls which are given to it, you elevate the level of the soul to a higher level, which means they become like matter at a much further distance. They become more power that they can give. And when Diana died, received a lot of people's prayers and thoughts. So that soul has reached a new level. Very much like John Paul. These are the souls which on other levels will manifest themselves as manifestation of God. Because they reach a new level. When your father dies, it's you and a few children and grandchildren who pray for him. But when you receive millions of prayers and souls at the same time, your mass center is like oxygen, becomes heavier, becomes plutonium. And then when you reach in that level, you interact with the different levels, and usually the souls end up to become the manifestations in other levels which they are superior to and are available to do. Then depends if they accepted it or their soul knows what they've done wrong that they reject it. Then it's them who decide their own station. There are a lot of people very nice, very humble outside and murderers inside. As we've seen in the Row of the Faith in recent past. So if a soul receives and accepts because he knows it's correct in receiving it, then you find these souls gather enough mass, because a thought is an energy, is gravitational field energy. So we call it on the earth language elevation, but in the totality they receive enough that they can give more, and when you can give more on an equal basis, we call it as messengers. Because the word spreads, this way the soul spreads. This is what this is the attribute of what you call born to be prophets. Christ didn't become Christ, bless his name, just because happened to be there. It carried the soul strong enough, with enough, mass, that it could spread, and then it touches and reach equal to amongst the people. You don't look at that there are 2 billion Christians today. You look at how many billions Christians have been from the time of the Christ to now. That's the spread of the soul. That's the strength of the soul. And the same goes, and how that soul achieved to reach where it is on equal basis. Any other question? We call it a day. It's 1:15.
Yep, we're over the 2 hours now, so we're probably good.
Yeah.
We can say there's a couple of other questions we can say for next time.
What are the questions?
Okay, I would say, wouldn't I? Okay, a question from Eric. Can man communicate with people who are already dead? Or who already died?
On a soul level or on your imagination? Yeah, Armand says make a telephone call. No, but it is You have to be at the level of communication, and a man's thought is not in that level. Man's soul is on that level, but would the soul transfer the knowledge to the physicality is a different thing. But in a way, when we dream, we reach that point. When you dream about, as I said before, your uncles you never met, but you know is your uncle because you have a connection through your RNA, then you receive the information. In so many ways, people are telling me, how do you know this? How do you know about that? What happened there? What do you know about it? We have access to all your souls. We don't need a telephone call. The spy within you sets the information of freedom of the equalness with the soul. So you don't need a telephone call. Can you communicate? Depends on what frequency you're sitting on. As I said to Caroline this morning, we see the man naked with no clothes on through his soul. And it's the man who's got to judge himself. The ones who betrays we see, the ones who serves we see. But silence is the virtues of the creators. It's for them to walk away or walk into.
Okay, there's another quick question for you from Ivan. When will it be told which GANs is safe to use as food and which is not?
The GANs which is good as food for me, it can be a GANs which is as poison for you, depending on your body's amino acid. And the structure and the way you've been, your total environment is set. This is very important. This is why I keep on telling people, do not go for the cup of life. And the Chinese have started all of it. They pray to it and then they drink it, they get better. So in time, we'll choose the GANs we created as matter, as food. It comes into full operation when you're in the space. Because on this planet, you have too much matter interference to be able to develop the proper ganses for the consumption as food. What doesn't suit you here when you go there, it suits you perfect. It's like, you know, you can't eat something here, but you go to another country on a holiday in, what do you call it, Caribbean, you can't stop eating it. This is very much in the space. You got to realize one point, and I keep on going back to it. Keshe Foundation on a space technology is for materials for a space. So a lot of things might not look correct here because they are for a space. Here they don't show any effect. But in so many ways we can see the results.
So suffice to say for now, don't eat the GANs.
Do not eat. I know some stupid people done that, but please don't do it till we tell you how. We are now running operation for Ebola in consumption of the GANs in a specific way, which at the moment we wait to see what happens, because as we see, pharmaceuticals have a lot of say in how the Keshe Foundation technology as a GANs will appear. And it's become objectable by the scientific world who have got access to it. We see the hand of pharmaceuticals trying to curtail the work. But it's their problem, because when a man can produce it in the house and help himself, he's not waiting for pharmaceutical to say if it's correct or not. We'll release some data that will shock you. It's coming to us through different access governments, and it's shocked even the scientists, and they don't agree with control which is coming from outside, because some pharmaceuticals would like to make huge amount of money with a wrong, what do you call it, material. It's become a lottery. Who's going to win the lottery with Ebola? Not necessarily who won it, but who can make it to look as they can take all the money and run. Ebola, what I see with this disease is very much is not made, but people see an opportunity by killing others, they can make a lot of money out of it. And that goes again back to people with a wrong mentality. But if the push comes to the shove in the next couple of weeks, we will show exactly how every man can produce scans and in appropriate way to use it for their use. It's their decision, they can do it, but we tell you how to do it, and if you can do it, then you can do and see the results. Because from what I see and what I hear from scientific world, they do not accept because what do you call it? It shows the fingerprint and the work of the multinationals trying to reject everything unless their material is sold, and the government pushing. If you don't use these materials, we cut this from what do you call it? This grant and that grant. So we give you a grant to make our pharmaceuticals richer, and then you become beggar for what we have given you, poorer. Then you have to pay us back for what we're going to do. As there's no question, we're just going to carry on forward. This is as Dr. Elia has planned it, 3 sections about a bone structure. In so many ways, last week we spoke about the way we look at the bone structure and how the bone is connected to the structure of the body of the man, and not looking at the bone as a separate entity.